In addition to 2 quarterbacks in this draft, Kevin Colbert and company also took 2 wide receivers, Calvin Austin in the 4th, George Pickens in the 2nd. Jeff, I want to ask you about what this means to Deontay Johnson, who's taken some of his stuff, Steeler attachments, out of social media, which seems to be a play these guys make these days. Where is Deontay Johnson in 2 years from now?
That's a good question. I would say from the immediate standpoint that he adds, these 2 add more speed and maybe more options, and maybe does free up, Deontay to have some more opportunities downfield. That's yet to be seen. I mean, the Steelers at some point are going to have to pay a wide receiver. If they don't think it's Deontay Johnson, they've obviously got a long way in the draft with their 2nd and 4th picks to be able to solidify that position with another draft next year, an opportunity to add some more.
I think we saw in the draft and over the last couple of weeks that there's 2 types of teams in the NFL right now. Teams that want to pay wide receivers and are willing to, and teams that are not. I mean, with some of the moves with A.J. Brown going to Philly and whatnot there. So I think the Steelers are the team that do not or not willing to pay wide receivers that type of money. If Deontay Johnson wants money within reason, which I'm thinking $15 million, maybe they do something. But, I think they like what they do now, man. Every 2 or 3 years, go get a wide receiver in the 2nd round and pay cheap for him and let him go because there's just so many of them out there. So I don't expect him to sign unless he has a reasonable number.
Yeah, I think what this does, it gives the Steelers some security at that position. And one thing they do well, they draft wide receivers really, really well, especially in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. Pickens might have some red flags. We've heard all about that the last couple of days, but he also has 1st-round talent, and there's something to be said for that. So now they have some depth at a position that, frankly, they didn't have a week earlier. And, if Deontay Johnson wants to sign for a reasonable amount of money, fine. But you saw what Mike Vrabel and the Titans did. A.J. Brown's a great player. He's better than Deontay Johnson, in my opinion. Not a knock on Deontay. Is really good. A.J. Brown's a star. And the Titans said, no, we don't want you around if you want that kind of money. That's it. So, yeah, I think the Steelers probably do fall more in that category. And given their history of drafting wide receivers, I can see why they wouldn't want to spend that much money on Deontay Johnson. He's really, really good. I don't know that he's great.
Yeah, and they have other things to worry about, like, Minkah Fitzpatrick and other guys eventually. You can't pay everyone. Jeff, I want to ask you about why they did not draft an offensive lineman at all. Yes, they were busy, but what is busy with their offensive line? They gave a guy who was already here, Chukwuekorfor, for money, so he's the same guy who was here, you would think, hopefully better. And then they brought in a backup center, and they brought in James Daniel, who's probably the best of the 3 they have. What do they do really to upgrade their offensive line? Is that a question for you still?
Well, I think, one of the back-end tackles did not fall down to them, so that led to Pickett. I'm not saying they would have taken it necessarily, but they had a needed quarterback. And like we just mentioned, they had a need at receiver. They didn't think any of those tackles in the 2nd to 5th rounds, obviously they didn't have a 5th-round pick, 2nd to 6th rounds, were worth taking a shot on. They felt like they fortified it, at least in the middle of the offensive line, through free agency. And they'll look at it again. They signed a couple of undrafted free agents. But I think they feel that they've used free agency to fortify their offensive line, especially in the middle, and they feel Dan Moore is going to make an improvement from his rookie year.
They got the quarterback, they got the running back, they got the wide receivers. But let me use the pun here. The Achilles heel of this team might be, again, the offensive line here. I mean, especially the tackles. I think they can cobble something together with the 5 or 6 guys they got inside. They can mix and match Kendrick Green, Mason Cole. I mean, Daniels, I think will be a star. Dotson. They can mix and match and make that work. You got Chukwuekorfor, who is, not the best in the world, not the worst in the world. You got Dan Moore, who was okay last year. He needs to take that step forward. Then what do you have after that? You got Joe Haig and Chaz Green. You're not going to just go pick somebody up off the waiver wire in the free agency market to help that out right now. And that's probably one of the reasons why they didn't even draft one, because they knew that one wasn't going to help them right away. I mean, this could be you could have the best defense in the world, all this talent and all these down the field threats. And if that offensive line is not decidedly better, you're going to have a problem.
Well, if anybody knows Achilles' heels, it's you, Mark. So thank you for chiming in on that. When was the last time the Steelers drafted a tackle in the 1st round? Was it Jermaine Stevens? I'm like racking my brain trying to think of one. They just don't do it.
That's who it was.
I don't think they never drafted a left tackle in the 1st round in the Ben Roethlisberger era, which is astounding to me. I just don't think they value that position the way some teams do. Some teams pay enormous amounts of money to the tackle position. The Steelers don't. It's still a problem. That was one of the worst offensive lines in football last year. I suspect for the reasons we've discussed, it will be marginally better. I still bet it's one of the 10 worst lines in football. And as a result, it's a bad situation for a new free agent quarterback or a rookie quarterback. You still have to deal with that line. That's not good.
All right, yes or no answer. It's all we have time for here, and that would be Devin Bush. Tomorrow is the deadline. Jeff, do they pick up his fifth-year option, yes or no?
No.
Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. It's only $10 million.
Josh?
Like a ton.
Yes. I'll go yes.
I'll say yes, too. Although it's gone to the final, that would make you think that it's probably not going to happen. We'll find out coming up tomorrow. And also, kudos to Kevin Colbert, 22 years on the job. To me, he's a Hall of Famer, and hopefully he'll get that designation in time. But an emotional farewell yesterday after he completed his work. And in the next couple of weeks, there'll be a new general manager coming up. When we come back, we'll talk about the Penguins. What do they got to do to beat the Rangers? It's next right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown.